I think the real test will come for Nafuzi at the year-end SEA Games, which is going to be held in Thailand in a few months' time. And if by then Malaysia had not improved from their tepid AFF Under-23 championships, where they exited at the group stage, where they probably failed in the AFC Under-23 qualifying, the risk of Nafuzi being sacked is high, but I think the final axe will fall if Nafuzi fails to bring Harimau Muda to the SEA Games semi-finals if he lasts this far. When you do not take chances, the opposition has every opportunity to grab that all-important goal against the run of play. And that was exactly what the Malaysian Under-23s ended up, as they lost by that solitary goal to Lebanon Under-23s in their opening AFC Under-23 Asian Cup qualifying group match held at the Taman Sat Stadium in Batu Thani earlier this evening. And for Nafuzi Zain's men, that is the worst possible start they could have had. And this was in spite of having, you can see, a lion's share of the possession, a substantial number of shots peppered at Anthony Masri's goal, and having a number of dangerous moments going forward, but crucially, none of the forwards were clinical. They threatened, but they were not always on target, rarely if at all. And all Lebanon needed to do was to actually make that one opportunity count. And I think for Nayaja, like many of those who actually wanted to catch the game in full, many were probably frustrated at the lack of a live streaming link that we tried to source and all that. But I think for some of us, we were for sure to get it. Some of us is probably towards the final 5 to 10 minutes of the first half, and then the rest of the second half. And I think this frustration, which we have to share first, because I think being unable to get a proper streaming or proper live telecast, or even a proper, say, view of the first half, sometimes having those key moments in the first half could have helped us in quite a number of ways in showing how the game was. But from what I've seen in those highlights and all that, I think what probably happened in the second half, and I mean this is where much of it I was going to talk about, and towards the end of the first half, this was probably where Malaysia had more chances. They had what it appeared to be the better opportunities, but unfortunately Nafuzi Zain's Young Tigers did not, or Harimau Muda did not take them, and that was the main reason behind the downfall. And when their captain Ali El Fadil, when he smashed home the winning goal 6 minutes from time, it came as a result of both the Harimau Muda being slow in reacting to the counter attack down from the left by Ali Casas, but at the same time, crucially, there's plenty of ball watching by the Malaysian defenders as they allow the Ali to take his time to fire home that winning goal, the only goal of the game. And I think to have held off, to have kept the Lebanese goalers for as long as they could, it was almost as good that even if they couldn't, they were misfiring. Even a point would have been a satisfactory start for Nafuzi Zain's men. But no, all it takes is a sucker punch of a goal to shred Malaysia into pieces, and they have to rebuild again ahead of their next game against Mongolia on Saturday. And with that defeat, the road to Saudi Arabia 2026 is already looking very precarious for the Harimau Muda. And to make matters worse, it now puts a lot more pressure on the man in the hot seat himself, Nafuzi Zain, who took over the under 23 post late last year after leaving Terengganu with a decent club record. But managing a club with limited resources and playing to the best of their abilities is a different kettle of fish from having the resources at his disposal by the Malaysian national team's semi-autonomous body and being given every opportunity to prove what he can achieve as a national team coach, even at age group level. And this is where Nafuzi, in some ways, fell short. Although, before this match, he and his coaching staff should be lauded by having the majority of the under 23s together for a centralized training camp in Thailand, where they took on Kuwait in 3 friendly matches, of which apparently all ended in 0-1 defeats. So probably Nafuzi learned something about playing against Middle East opposition against an opponent that is of a similar level to Lebanon. And with the young Lebanese, the admirable thing is the Harimau Muda managed to keep them at bay for much of the game. In fact, even producing a number of excellent chances against the young Lebanese. The only problem was they could not finish. And even as late as the end of the first half, when Alif Izwan actually had one golden opportunity to score the opening goal but off a corner, but he could only hit over the bar towards the end of added time in the first half. And that was a pattern that would continue to repeat itself for Harimau Muda against Lebanon for the rest of the second half and beyond. Because to be fair to the Lebanese, Malaysia had an advantage in a couple of areas. Number one, the centralized group stage is being played in Thailand, which is in close proximity to Malaysia. And this gave them an advantage in terms of the humidity and the acclimatization compared to the Lebanese, who probably came a few days before the start of this group qualifying round. And under that kind of hot and humid weather, it's the Lebanese who suffered more. And it showed because they did have to slow the pace down in order not to burn out. And already less than 20 minutes in, Lebanon were already forced into an early substitution due to an injury. And thus, as such, with the early and forced substitution, with the heat in Malaysia's favour, the advantage in a way swung or leveled things up, in spite of the slight edge Lebanon had over Malaysia in terms of quality. And Malaysia actually had their moments. They were quite effective in making their moves, the transitions from defense to attack. It's only the decision making and especially that final touch where Malaysia were found wanting. And in the second half, from the way how Malaysia tried to put some pressure on Lebanon, they continued. And Fergus Tierney, who is now with Sabah FC, he had 2 of the better chances for Malaysia early in the second half, where first he forced a corner off an attempt, then the off across to force a corner, then from the corner itself he flicked his header just wide, and that could have been the golden moment that Malaysia could have had. And then you have another golden opportunity in the 68th minute when Faris Danish when Aiman Yusof was actually broke free from the Lebanese defense after he was put through by substitute Nabil Qayyum, but unfortunately he dragged his shot real wide. And I think as the minutes went by, this was probably one of the closest chances Malaysia had to taking a shock lead against Lebanon. And that quick interplay also, 3 minutes before that goal that they conceded, once again they had this interplay that Malaysia were able to execute in the final third. But once again, that final ball was found wanting, because even before their substitute striker could come in to reach the ball, the Lebanese keeper Masri was able to receive the ball ahead of the striker. So as a result, what actually happened was a sucker punch which could have been avoided. It's one thing not to be able to counter the dribbling brilliance or the dribbling masterclass. I would say masterclass, but more like the close ball dribbling skills of Casas, but the slack defending at that split moment, because they weren't really threatened for much of the game in the second half. That was when the sucker punch really come in. Ali Al-Fadil, he had the ball. The 3 Malaysian defenders surrounding him were some distance away. So you can say that they were ball watching, they were not paying attention to the guy who is inside their box, and he was given that little space to just smash in the winner pass to Hilmi Sharani, and that settled the rest of the match. It's not a pleasant task. The misfiring of their forwards, despite their best efforts, ultimately undid them. And this could have been an opportunity where Malaysia would have staked a claim to be in contention to reach the finals, the under 23 finals in Saudi Arabia next year, even though it is not an Olympic qualifying tournament in this particular cycle. But still, it's a real missed chance to make a statement ahead of that, of what could have been a do or die encounter in their final group game against Thailand on Tuesday. That was that one missed opportunity, and it's back to the drawing board for Nafuzi Zain's men, and they have to figure out what they really needed to do to score the goals, to not just dominate, put pressure in the final third, but to score. Because when you don't score, you're not going to win games. When you do not have the ball at the back of the nets, no amount of good interplay, no amount of good effort will help, because ultimately the final score does not lie. Lebanon won it because they took their one golden chance well in the second half, and that was as much as Lebanon deserved. And they were able to keep, to credit to the Lebanese, they were able to keep Malaysia at bay, and that's where little, apart from that one or two moments of, you can say, brilliance, where they were able, like that that shot that was dragged wide by Aiman Yusof in the middle of the second half. It was that quick thinking from Nabil Qayyum that he was able to release that true pass in that split second to ensure that Aiman had the opportunity to beat the offside trap and potentially score the goal. But those moments were unfortunately few and far between. And when you do not have that kind of inspired play, intelligence, the ability to pick those little pockets of spaces where the Malaysian forwards can exploit, I think that threat of ever going behind, even as the score was heading towards goalless at that point, was always to go against that, and so improve. So I think the real critical lesson for Nafuzi's Harimau Muda is they have to rework on the drawing board on how to get into more dangerous goal scoring positions, how to make their chances count, how to be able to overpower their opponents with their quick thinking on the feet, on the ball, and ultimately how to be able to keep their concentration for the 90 minutes by all the players. It's not just your attackers who are not firing, but because they were attacking quite substantially in the second half, the Malaysian defenders struggled, and that's where I think they were conceding a few fouls. There was a little momentum heading to Lebanese side, but it appeared that the Malaysian defense were not paying attention. And this was a defense led by Terengganu first team defender and already a full international, one of the few full internationals in the starting 11 today, and Ubaidillah. So when you have that kind of defense that was not able to fully concentrate for that period, it was always going to count when it really mattered. They could have, if there would have been a what ifs. What if Malaysia were able to keep out that dangerous low cross from Ali Kassas? What if somebody was close enough to deny Ali Al-Fadil the space to shoot? But now it doesn't matter. The game is already over. The score already stands with Lebanon with the 3 points, Malaysia with 0 points. And even though the next game is against Mongolia in 3 days' time, it's already an uphill task for Nafuzi Zain and his boys. They have to at least record a good, solid, not just one goal, a dominant game against Mongolia with goals to show for, not just 1 or 2, probably 4 or 5, to make a statement that they are at least able to shoot and score, and perhaps hope for an upset against Thailand in their final game, which would at least put them in contention as one of the best runners-ups in the group. And if Malaysia were able to do that next step against Mongolia, they would have at least a little fighting chance, although playing against the Thais on their home ground is never going to be easy. And with the defeat, already Malaysian football fans were calling, a few quarters were already calling for the sacking of Nafuzi. But I would personally believe that even if Malaysia end up failing in their under 23 Asian Cup qualifying campaign, I think the real test will come for Nafuzi at the year-end SEA Games, which is going to be held in Thailand in a few months' time. And if by then Malaysia had not improved from their tepid AFF Under 23 championships, where they exited at the group stage, where they probably failed in the AFC Under 23 qualifying, the risk of Nafuzi being sacked is high. But I think the final axe will fall if Nafuzi fails to bring Harimau Muda to the SEA Games semi-finals, if he lasts this far, if he gets a stay of execution regardless of how this campaign ends. Although I think for some Malaysian fans, enough is enough. They probably would have thought that Nafuzi is clearly not fit enough to lead a Malaysian national team, regardless of whatever he has done in club level. So perhaps, is it perhaps a case where, given now 1/1 of the tournament's gone this year, is it a case where Nafuzi is a bit overwhelmed by the gargantuan task he has in leading a disparate group of players, some from already fully capped internationals at the men's national team, some are still in their academies and in their feeder teams of their teams of their parent clubs, and still trying to make their mark in the professional football scene in Malaysia. I think that blending in has not been a smooth transition so far, even though Nafuzi and his coaching staff have tried the best they could. But ultimately, I think some certain quarters will see that probably there are limits to what Nafuzi can do with these slots. And could it be the case where if Nafuzi fails to deliver a satisfactory win, it's not just 3 points. The win has to be whole, it has to be complete, it has to be filled with not just a mere 1 or 2 goals, at least 3-4 goals, to show that Malaysia are still in with a shout, however remote. If he fails in his next task against Mongolia, there's every chance that Kelala Jaya might not take this lightly, and Nafuzi may or may not be spared the axe when that happens.